Hey everyone, this is David. Welcome back behind the velvet rope. Let's just get right into it today because we are joined by the one, the only Mr. Zach Posen.
Hi, hi. Happy to be here.
Well, thank you for doing this. Welcome. You were just saying you're in Bucks County at your parents' house. It looks so
I am.
relaxing. You have a
It is.
fireplace.
Yep.
Well, first of all, before we get into anything, congratulations on the outfit. I mean, costume designer for this unbelievable movie, which I cannot wait to see, starring Zoe Deutsch and Dylan O'Brien. I want to talk all about this, how it came about, your inspiration for this movie.
Sure.
Before we get to the present, just, from one nice New York City Jewish boy to another, I want to start at the beginning. It's such an iconic career. So I just want to start at the beginning. I like to get to know people when they're here for the first time. Like when you were growing up on the Lower East Side in Soho, when did you first realize that fashion was your calling? Was it at a really young age?
Wow. I think growing up in Soho in New York City, it was an amazing time when fashion kind of was on the streets of New York in such a strong way. So it was definitely very much there. But my first love was theater and film. And my dad recorded all the great classics and all the Hollywood films and international films and kind of like showed us everything. And then, my parents took my sister and I to as much theater as possible. So that was really my first love. And then that kind of transitioned into, self-expression and fashion on the subways and seeing how far I could push it. And, fun time in the mid 90s to be a teenager.
Do you remember those early years, the lean years, like when you were just first starting out? Does that seem like another lifetime to you, or do you remember those vividly?
No, remember them really definitely a lifetime ago, that's for sure. But yeah, I mean, I had a blast in my teenage years. That's when I first sort of got into fashion. My mom said like time to get a summer job, and I got an internship on 7th Avenue. So that was like my first experience actually like seeing what was then even more so like the city within the city, and the garment district in New York was like hustling and bustling and bubbling and stitching, and it was like crazy. And I kind of loved it. And then I was interning at the Costume Institute at the Metropolitan Museum every day after school. So I was just like immersing myself as much as possible. Then I'd go and work at this resale like fashion store that was on the Upper West Side. I'd cross the park after that and work a few hours there. And it was also like the mid to late 90s in New York where there was still like subculture. And so that's when I started going out in New York and really got the kind of tail end of an amazing nightlife scene that existed still in New York. So we'd go to Jackie 60s at Mother, and there was a whole kind of underworld performing nightclub scene. And it was really cool to kind of see and get the kind of last tail end of it. So yeah, it was very formative, I would say, New York at that time period. And then I left and went to England for design school at Central St. Martin's. And that had its own, major influence on me. I came back and started my company really young. And, I watched with my company and growing in fashion, I watched my world in fashion I entered fashion before digital was in fashion. And I really watched that come with this big wave. So when I started fashion, it was still like the old fashion system and all these rules that had been established and settled in very strongly about the roles between retail and editorial, and all the hierarchies were like really strong and in place. When I started, like every city in this country sent like domestic reviewers to Fashion Week, right? And like slowly those started to become one newspaper, I just watched a huge change. And um, when I started my company, I felt this really strong urgency that New York City kind of needed me. And it was just I did my first show right after 9/11. And from there, over the next 20 years, grew my company and got to travel the world and be involved in a lot of different diverse projects. And is proud to grow a business with such incredible artisans in New York City. And my city has given me a lot, and I've given my city a lot too. And then I think right before the pandemic, a good friend of mine, Scoop Wasserstein, who I'd been working with on a different project for streaming or television that we're still working on, said, "Will you read this script? What do you think of this script?" And I read this script and I thought, this is amazing. It's great. And I have some ideas. And then he put me in touch with the writer, who is Graham Moore. And, not just Graham Moore. Graham Moore is like an award-winning, Oscar-winning, screenwriter, and he wanted to direct this film. And so then I met with him, and we went over the script, and I had some ideas and notes, just technical stuff about tailoring or cutting, and that's not necessarily my training, but it's something I know quite a bit about. And generally I have a lot of kind of I'm good at kind of notes with screenplays, and I've over the years read them a lot. And whether it's for friends who are actors or whatnot, going back to my first love of theater and film. And from there I went to a reading at CAA, an early reading of it, and I just thought, this flows. Like, this project flows really tightly. And then I thought we were going to go into kind of production, and then COVID happened, and it got kind of stretched out for a long time, for over like a year. And in that period of time, there was a lot of research being sent back and forth. And then kind of really quickly, about a year and a half ago, it was like, I guess it was like the end of it was like December, and they're like, we're going into production. And I started putting together color stories. And I also then thought, like, we need a really strong tailoring partner in this. And I called friends of mine at Huntsman in London, which is Savile Row tailoring spot. And they read the script and they loved it. And like I thought, and then at that point, simultaneously, the production got scheduled to be in London, right outside of London. So that kind of worked. And then, unfortunately, I was unable to go to the UK during the filming production. And we hired Sophie O'Neill as a co-costume designer. And she was like the secret sauce ace in this project. And she had amazing taste, great resources to pull from in a very short amount of time, with a, I would say, how to make a lot out of a little in a short period of time.